I once gave a speech in Seattle's Opera House where there were 5,000 people. Wes Tristan was talking about feeding the 5,000. When you have 5,000 people applaud you, you can see why opera singers like it. It's amazing. Anyway, hello. I've just used half of a minute. Now, I'm here to talk about... What am I here to talk about? There it is. I work on policy, and policy does not help what we've been talking about. All the talkers have basically said very much the same thing. Different starting points, different emphases, different bodies of knowledge, different range and depth. But basically, we know the food system is unsustainable, however we decide the meaning of sustainability. The problem is what to do about it. Now, in the world of food, we've got competing models. I'm going to be very crude. We've got one model, if you like, says the food system's fine. It's the consumers who are the problem. I've always called it the wrong consumer theory. Everything would be perfect if only, whichever industry you're talking to, they will say what they think needs to be done. We've got the wrong consumers, the wrong mindsets, the wrong bodies, and the solutions are to personalize diet, to fix your body, some technical fixes, maybe fix the body, definitely change behavior. Everyone's in love with nudging. I have a PhD in psychology. This is the loosest, thinnest, weakest version of changing behavior. If you want to change behavior, have a war. That changes behavior. It's terrible, but it's true. And we have a situation. Look at what all the speakers have said. This is a very serious situation we're in, but we're dealing with nothing when it comes to consumers. We don't tell consumers what is a sustainable diet. We don't tell them even what is a sustainable food product. We don't help them. We don't even give them information and education. There is some, after 40 years, health advice. Walt Willett gave a lovely summary of that. But we don't help them to resolve the problem we've been talking about all the rest of today. The other analysis, on the right, is that actually it's the food system that's in crisis. Most speakers today have subscribed to that theory. I do too. And that is why nothing is helping consumers, because the implications of that are immense. It means changing everything. Not little bits here and there, everything. Because essentially, we're saying there is a mismatch of bodies, minds, markets, and food supply chains. You don't laugh now, because that's a very serious implication. And it's that little bottom list of 3 at the bottom on the right, which is what we need to do. And if there was a war, that's what would happen. Because almost automatically, big changes happen in and from crisis. It is a terrible conclusion, but I have worked in food policy for 40 years, and that is my conclusion. But I was asked to talk about consumers. What is our appeal to consumers? You're a consumer. What is the appeal to consumers? Is it fear? Listen to Bill Clinton, the clever communicator. He was saying, good people put together in a room, it can be resolved. The entire United Nations is not delivering a sustainable food system. Even the wonderful Swedish government is not delivering a sustainable food system. Let's be very clear, the indicators are terrible. So what is the motivation which will get the change, the systemic change that we think is needed? Fear? It's not doing much at the moment. We could say people aren't frightened enough. I don't think fear is a good thing. I'm a psychologist who's gone wrong. Fear is not a good motivator. I did my PhD on phobics. It's not a good motivator. They run away. They don't face the problem. Enlightened self-interest is what in the 19th century, in the rich Western world, was the main motivator. Enlightened self-interest brought people together. But the model of food that was sold was one that food would be better if it was cheaper, and that the problem of the world was underconsumption. And still today, poor people in the poor countries are spending huge proportions of their incomes on food. Their food needs to get cheaper. Our food needs to get more expensive in the rich world. This is a complicated message from addressing consumers to policymakers. We're talking about the 20th century's model of progress. And the model was put into place after the Second World War, based upon 1930s science. And it said, we've heard bits of it today, we can use fertilizer, we can apply science to soil management, we can put water onto areas that are dry and take water out of areas which are flooded. And we will then increase food production and everyone will get healthier. But the key thing was it made food cheaper. And that is why we're in the mess we're in. This has been the most successful period of policy for consumers ever. Billions of people have been fed cheaper, appealing to our interests so that we can buy more suits, more shirts, more shoes, more holidays, and for our children. This is a crisis. Richard Horton of The Lancet was absolutely right. If you didn't know that as the editor of The Lancet, you would have thought he was a radical political activist. But I assure you, he's speaking for many, many people in the world of public health, food, and the environment. I have a group that I call fondly the Angry Professors. And I was telling a very famous British French chef of this, and he said, "Tim, it is not angry professors, they are hungry. They're hungry, angry professors. That's what we have to convince." There are many, many angry, hungry professors who want to get the change, but no one is talking about consumers. Consumers have to have a better appeal from the food industry. Is it to their children? What is it? Because if it's not done at a population level, we've had it. That's what the evidence says. We have to live within environmental limits. We have to live for public health. And the food system is not doing that. And the elephant in the room, both metaphorically and actually, there are now more obese and overweight people on the planet, are consumers. So I want more attention for consumers. And I just met President Clinton. I teach my students an exercise, 3 minutes with the president. What are you going to say? I had 30 seconds. And I said one thing, sustainable dietary guidelines. We don't have sustainable dietary guidelines. When Sweden introduced sustainable dietary guidelines, they were made to withdraw them by the European Union. This is and was a scandal. The world needs sustainable dietary guidelines. The UN, the ICN2, the International Conference #2 on Nutrition #2, is meeting this November and has not wanted to talk about sustainable diets. That is something we need to redress. Sustainable dietary guidelines. That's the reality of the Sustainable Development Goals when it comes to food. SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, need sustainable dietary guidelines. SDG 2.